Yeah. So thank you all for coming. We're kind of excited. We hope a lot of you apply for this, fellowship. Uh, just to set some ground rules, this is going to be almost an hour long. Siddharth, Purnendu, and Pooja will talk for a bit, and after that we throw open to questions. So you can all put your questions on the chat, even when they're talking. It will just help us filter and be more streamlined about it. In general, just you can keep your videos on. We'd love that because when the speakers are talking, it's nicer to see faces than just blank names. And but do put yourself on mute all the time. So yeah, I mean, again, welcome again to Moving Upstream Luni River. Uh, the third round of fellowships that Veditum, that is the organization that he founded. They're organizing. This time they're partnering with A4 Stores and IIT Delhi School of Public Policy, and we're incredibly excited to have them on board. The other collaborative partners out of Eden. So just to introduce the speakers, so Siddharth is, like I said, the founder of Veditum, pretty much the heart and soul of the organization, uh, and runs a bunch of projects. He'll talk more about it, about water and rivers. One of the things I think some of you or many of you may know about him is that he did walk 3,000 kilometers along the Ganga, produced a great documentary out of it. He's also walked along the Ken, Mahanadi, and other rivers, and really introduced this immersive, slow storytelling form along rivers. Then we have Dr. Pooja Prasad. She's from the School of Public Policy in IIT Delhi. Has done a lot of work on the intersection of water, agriculture for livelihoods, specializing in sand rivers, of which Luni is one such, unique river in India. And then we have Purnendu Kavuri. Does a lot of, he's a researcher and has done a lot of work on ecology and caste, on pastoral communities. He's now the senior advisor for Foundation for Ecological Security, director of Center for Social Ecology in Jaipur. So, Siddharth, if you want to start your presentation.
Thank you, Mohit. Thanks everyone for joining today. Just a reminder that if you can keep your videos on while we're speaking, it'd be great. Visual feedback is really helpful in sort of modulating voice or seeing if your interest is dropping off. So that will be great. Thank you all for joining today. Thanks for your interest in the fellowship. We're here to answer your questions. Like Mohit said, while I'm talking, if you already have your questions ready, just put them in the chat. It'll help us to sort of combine questions that are common between people and answer at once. So just trying to be more efficient with our time so that we can answer more of your questions. Now that I have all of you here, I'm going to use the opportunity to talk a little bit about Veditum and the Moving Upstream project. I think it will also give you a bit more context about what we are doing and why we do it. So Veditum is a not-for-profit research, media and action-oriented organization. And from the very beginning, we've wanted to understand problems before we start trying to address them. And a way of trying to learn about what went wrong or what are the problems that we should work towards addressing has been to walk across India. And we started walking along rivers in 2016. That's how this process had started for us. And we've walked along multiple rivers under the Moving Upstream project at Veditum. And through these walks, we've understood challenges that our rivers are facing and communities along rivers are facing. And one of the outputs, which is another flagship project that we have at Veditum right now, is India Sandwatch, which has emerged from the challenge of indiscriminate and illegal sand mining that we've seen our rivers face. So you'll see as I move through my presentation that these are two flagship projects, Moving Upstream and India Sandwatch, but there's a lot of other peripheral and connected things that we do in partnership with other partners. We do a lot of publishing work. We're interested in accountability work, so we're doing a lot of that. We are doing a lot of media and communications work, and we expect a lot of the work from the Moving Upstream Luni Fellowship also to be on those lines of communicating the story of the River Luni and the riparian community who lives alongside the River Luni. Just to tell you the scope of what we've done till now, the Moving Upstream project is where we've been walking along rivers, as I had mentioned. The first river that I had walked as part of the project was the Ganga. And while I was walking is when I sort of realized that it's not enough for just my perspective to be out there or for my bias to be looking at things, but how do we sort of expand this? So right from the start, the idea was how to include more people and their perspectives in looking at our ecosystems and documenting those ecosystems, building networks and working with communities. So then right after I finished my walk along the Ganga is when partners started reaching out, and we immediately decided to walk along the river Ken, which is a threatened river by a huge dam and the river interlinking project. And we walked along that river, and every time we've spent nights at a village talking to communities, it just made us realize how much we do not know. We're not going out there to teach anybody anything. We are going out there to learn. One of the things that the river Ken is threatened from is a huge dam that's coming up on the river, which is, and this is like a 50,000 crore rupee project. You'd imagine that people who are living along the river would know about it. 95% of the villages that we visited along the river had no clue that such a thing was going to happen. That's the dissociation of planning and the lives of communities. And this has become more and more apparent for us as we walked along more rivers. And like I mentioned, we've always wanted to expand this. So right after I walked the Cairn, I was walking with Paul Salupek on the Out of Eden walk. And we were discussing, I was sharing with him my idea for the fellowship that we wanted to institute at Veditum. And he said, why don't we do this together? So along with Out of Eden Walk, we launched the Moving Upstream Fellowship for the River Betwa, where 8 fellows have walked along the River Betwa. In fact, Mohit is one of our fellows who walked along the River Betwa, and now he's working with us to help us execute the new fellowship program. So we walked along the River Betwa, 8 fellows, and they've created incredible documentation from their walk. The documentation has led to a lot of trigger outcomes of more organizations coming and looking at that river, expanding their research in these geographies. We've built relationships with communities. We've learned the challenges that they're facing, and we've been able to advocate for them in different places. Again, it's not that we are saying we are the voice of the people. We just amplifiers to their voices. They have their own voice, communities have their own voice. We just amplifiers for their concerns. And we're hoping that as we build these databases and we build these networks over time, the community's voices will become more stronger. After the Betwa, we launched a fellowship on the River Sindh. 7 fellows walked the length of the River Sindh, and they've created amazing documentation. In fact, one graphic novel is currently being created as an outcome of the Moving Upstream Sindh Fellowship project. So after the Sindh project, we've continuously been working on the publication aspect of things. And from all the fellowships that we've done or the walks that we've done under the Moving Upstream project, there's been a lot of outcomes that have emerged. On the right, you can see the poster from the Moving Upstream Ganga project that's now live. It's on our website for you to watch it if you want. We have zines that have been produced, soundscapes that have been produced from these walks. We're writing stories for children in Hindi right now from these walks. There's a book that's been published and distributed globally. We've done online storytelling sessions, offline storytelling sessions, and the spectrum of this is expanding. And why I want to share the spectrum.
Ads running. And
sorry.
Sorry, there's someone on. Yeah.
Right. So we're sharing these outputs with you because we want you to know that we're not looking at you as data collectors or annotators only. You have your own voice, you have your own style, you have your own perspective, and we want you to bring that into the practice. We want you to share that with us, show that to us even in your application, because that's what makes your application stronger. It's not about whether you can analyze data. It's about how you can perceive your interactions with somebody with these processes. And now we finally come to a place where things came together. Pooja and I started talking. We had the School of Public Policy at IIT Delhi come in. Pooja's interest in the Luni, Punendu's interest in the Luni. It's all come together. They'll speak about it in a little bit. But before I hand the space over to them, I just want to say that walking as a method has been eye-opening for me. And that's the opportunity that we wanted to share at Veditum on how this very simple method allows us to transcend a lot of boundaries that have been created, allows us to create a more intimate relationship with people we are meeting. It allows us to not be in a power play with people. There will always be power play when we are meeting people. There is no doubt about it. But what walking does is that it helps us reduce these layers of power play. Walking also makes us vulnerable. You can't run away with a big bag suddenly from somewhere. So you are in a place where you are not the person in power. You are somebody who's an interested person in the stories that people have, in the challenges that they are facing, in the realities of their everyday lives. And that is what we wish to explore with the fellowship that we're doing, with the other walks that we're doing. And we'll move into the Q&A session after Pooja and Purnendu have spoken. So I'll now invite Pooja to come in and speak for a few minutes, talk about her perspective, introduce herself a little bit. And then after that, Purnendu. Pooja, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Siddharth, and also Mohit. There was a really nice presentation, Siddharth. Every time I hear you talk about your experiences, I'm all the more excited that we have this opportunity to partner with you. So thank you again for this. So I'm Pooja Prasad. I am an assistant professor in the School of Public Policy at IIT Delhi. And here at the School of Public Policy, so it's an academic unit where we have a master's and a PhD program on public policy, and we try to engage with the questions of science, technology, and innovation with sustainable development in various sectors, of which water and agriculture, energy happen to be some of them. And my own interest, as Mohit said, is on the question of sustainable use of water and also livelihoods that depend on water. And I have been engaged in a project A4 Store, which is one of the sponsoring projects for this initiative. And in this project, that's how I actually got introduced to sand rivers. And in this project, we are actually studying sand rivers across different countries. So there are many sand rivers like the Luni also in Africa. So there are also African countries who are like in Kenya and Zimbabwe and Mozambique, who are studying their sand rivers to see how livelihoods may the interaction of people and riparian communities with the river. And we here in A4 Store have a really nice opportunity to learn from the Luni River and the historic interaction between people, different interventions, different policies that were implemented, and how that impacted the Luni, and how over time, in turn, this has impacted the livelihoods of the people, who it has impacted in what ways, and what is the way forward. So that kind of frames what this project A4 Store is about. And my entry point into this, I am just, again, very happy that Siddharth and I talked about it. And this project is just starting, and we thought that what better way to really start learning about Luni. And of course, for me also, meeting Professor Purnendu Kavuri, and who he'll talk in a moment, and he's one person who's studied the Luni over decades, and he brings in so much wisdom. And from him and his readings, it was clear that it would be a very nice way to start with this walk along the river, to really kind of understand, as Siddharth said, first understand the nature of the problem before we start to drill into some of the deeper questions, more as research questions. So I'll stop at that, because I know we have a lot of things to talk about today, and I'll hand it over to Purnendu.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you, Siddharth and Mohit, for asking me to join this very exciting adventure that you're trying to put together. And I'm glad that there are quite a few of young people who have come and shown an interest in working. So I'll talk about 2 or 3 things. Firstly, I'll talk about a point that Siddharth made about the method of walking as to why it is something very important and worthwhile. Then I'll talk about how my personal experience of the Luni. And thirdly, I'll talk about how we can engage with communities and how our work can become part of a reflexive process. So on the question of walking as a method, my experience with this particular kind of fieldwork actually goes back a long time. In 1986, which is well before any of you were born, I was a young man of 27 at that time, and I started working on pastoralism in Western Rajasthan. So there was nothing on pastoralism at that time in Western Rajasthan. I was probably the first person to start working on that. And the broad view was that pastoralism is a dying way of life, and very soon it should be replaced by sedentary forms of animal husbandry and so on. I was not convinced of the same. And what I did was I joined a herd of, it was a huge herd of some 5,000 sheep of many, many owners. And this was in a village near Jaisalmer called Chandan, in between Pokhran and Jaisalmer. And I walked with them. I had a camel with me, so I put all my saman on the camel. And I walked with them for 9 months. We went from Jaisalmer towards north of Nagaur. Then we moved into Sikar, which is north of Rajasthan. Then we went into Haryana. I crossed Rohtak. And we were basically grazing the animals every day. I was collecting information on what the animals were doing. And then we made our way back via Bikaner into Pokhran, into Jodhpur. Now, this was actually a life-changing experience for me because I came from a middle-class urban family like anybody else here, most people here. And you got thrown into the deep end of the pool. And you suddenly realize that there's a whole world out there, a system of life that just didn't exist for me. So it, as Siddharth said, it strips, when you land up for fieldwork in a jeep, you're coming with power. Of course, we are always coming with power. I'm speaking in English, and I remember one of my shepherds would always sit and watch me writing notes and say, "Hey, ye to longhand mein likhe hai." So longhand itself was a power to write, you see. So power is there, but in a way, it allows you to reduce the level of distance between human beings. You can get into warmer, closer relationships. One cannot pretend to be them. The distance is always there. But I think as a methodology, I subsequently realized that other ways are important. Archival research is important. Data collection is important. Surveys are important. But this is something which gives you an intimacy and a kind of, it complements a bird's eye view. It gives you an ant eye view, as it were, things like that. So I'm glad you people are showing an interest. It's a kind of anthropological method. You can broadly call it an anthropological method of immersion. And so if you do it, we will have more conversations on how to go about this. The second thing I wanted to talk to you was the Luni itself. In 2000, I was very fortunate in getting a grant. I had just come back after my PhD. I had done my PhD in The Hague, and I had come back and I wanted to do some research. So I managed to get a grant to work on the Luni, which was really not something that had been studied very much until then. And what I did was I didn't go upstream. I went downstream. I got myself a camel, and I got myself a camel cart. And of course, I got myself a shepherd to help me do it. I cannot pretend that I did it all by myself. And then we walked along the entire course of the river, 50% of the river, not the entire course of the river, over a period of a couple of years. Every 3-4 months, we would do it and do research. And I realized that this river had huge potential for research and understanding and analysis. And some of the things that came across to me in the course of that study, which, if you are interested, we can share with you those documents. And it needed more work. About 2 years ago, I said, let me go and see what's happened in that old that landscape of mine. So about a year and a half ago, I again went into the landscape. This time I'm too old now to go on foot or on camel and do those heroics. So I had a small Maruti 800 car with me, and I've been traveling around the whole landscape and looking at what's happening. There's tremendous dramatic change. Some of the things that I would like to tell you about this landscape and this river system is that we all have a model of rivers as agrarian systems. This is not an agrarian river. This is a pastoral river. This is a river that was built around livestock and around open access, among common pool resources. So it's a very different kind of landscape that you might encounter perhaps in the Ganga or the Jamuna. Very different kind of landscape. So you get a chance to test and explore an alternate perception of how development can engage, how ideas of development can engage with a model of adaptation that is not what you will encounter in other riverine systems. Some of the important things that you will note that I would like to emphasize is that this is a dynamic system. Historically, the Luni was not like an ice river. Well, even the Deccan rivers are not coming from glaciers, but they have much longer flows. But the Luni used to flow only for 3-4 months in a year. But those 3-4 months dramatically shaped the whole landscape: agriculture, livestock, forests, small shrublands. This is the grassland area. Within the banks of the river, within the river, you can find hundreds and hundreds of species of grasses. You find shrubs. So the ecology of this landscape, if you have come from, say, a forest area, say Nilgiris, or from an agrarian area, this is a very, very different landscape that you're getting into. So these are some of the questions that I just want to throw you right at the beginning so that you get a taste, a flavor of the kind of social ecological environment that you're going to enter into. Lastly, I'll just talk about this wonderful opportunity that is being offered by this walk, is that today there is a fair amount of technology available in which you can communicate with people in communities and so on. So I think technology can play a very important role, but people have to work the technology in a way that it is no longer just giving of information, but there can be two ways of getting information. There is a lot of ground knowledge that is available in communities, but they find no opportunities of expressing it. I feel that people who join this fellowship can use modern technology and an open mind to learn things which is not available in a book, but it is part of conventional knowledge about grasses, about animals, about plants, about kinds of soil. For example, I'll just stop in a minute. In these local vocabularies, you have different names for different kinds of elevations of land. There are 7 different gradations of elevations of land. So you can start thinking in the vocabulary of local communities and trying to translate vocabularies into what people in our society understand and comprehend. So these are some of the broad introductory remarks I have made. We look forward to listening to questions from you all. Thank you, Siddharth, Pooja. Thank you, Mohit.
Thank you. I think that gives people a good context of the landscape, of the riverscape, of the people there. I have not seen any questions yet in the chat. So are we assuming there are no questions? I'm assuming you've come here, so you have questions. So Zoom has a raise hand feature. Can you use that, please, to raise your hands? We'll call you in queue to ask your questions. Please don't unmute out of turn to ask. We'll go in a queue. So please raise your hand using the feature on Zoom. Anyone with a question?
No, someone was trying, I think. Can't really.
Okay. Varsha. Okay, Varsha, go for it.
ओके हेलो सिद्धार्थ और बाकी सभी लोग मैं जानना चाहती हूँ कि आप लोग ये जो फेलोशिप है और जो मैंने थोड़ा पढ़ा भी, तो अगर कोई व्यक्ति मतलब जो भी जर्नलिस्ट है वो इस वॉक के लिए जाते हैं, तो उनके लाइक रहने का और उसको लेकर जो गाइडेंस होगा वो किस तरह से होगा कि वो कहाँ पे रुकेंगे क्योंकि कोई बिल्कुल डिफरेंट पार्ट ऑफ मतलब राजस्थान से नहीं है, अगर मैं उत्तराखंड में हूँ और मैं वहां से वहां पहुंचती हूँ, तो वो कैसे आप लोग मैनेज करने में क्या हेल्प आउट करते हैं?
राइट, थैंक्स वर्षा फॉर योर क्वेश्चन। मैं हिंदी और इंग्लिश दोनों में आंसर करता हूँ सभी के लिए।
Sure.
कि जो प्रोसेस है फेलोशिप का और वॉकिंग का, आप फर्स्ट जहां से आपका स्टार्टिंग पॉइंट है वो आपको पता होता है। उसके बाद हर दिन आप जब वॉक करते हैं, आप लोगों से मिलते हैं, आपके खाने का बंदोबस्त भी आपको लोगों से बात करके करना है, और आपके रहने का बंदोबस्त भी आपको लोगों से बात करके ही करना है। यहाँ पर कोई होटल्स गेस्ट हाउसेस अवेलेबल नहीं है। जहां हमारे कॉन्टैक्ट्स होंगे वो हम जरूर अपने फेलोज के साथ शेयर करेंगे, पर 9 out of 10 केसेस में फेलोज को हर रात रहने की जगह खुद से फिगर आउट करना, और ये बहुत डॉन्टिंग लगता है और चैलेंजिंग भी है ये टास्क। लेकिन हमारे जितने भी फेलोज हैं, मोहित भी यहाँ पर हैं, बागेश्वर भी इनफैक्ट ही इज वन ऑफ आवर पास्ट फेलोज, वो भी हैं यहाँ पर। और मैंने भी बहुत वॉक किया है अक्रॉस इंडिया, मैंने अक्रॉस राजस्थान भी वॉक किया है। तो इनिशियली बहुत ज्यादा चैलेंजिंग टास्क लगता है, बट आप धीरे धीरे उस प्रोसेस में ढल जाते हैं। एंड आप लोगों से बात करके, लोग शहरी लोगों को, मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि आप शहर से हैं, पर शहरी लोग को अक्सर लगता है कि कोई इतना जेनरस क्यों होगा, पर यूजुअली लोग रहने के लिए और खाने के लिए हमेशा हेल्प कर ही देते हैं। आई जस्ट रिपीट दिस इन इंग्लिश अगर किसी को जरूरत हो तो। Even though we've asked that you must be fluent in Hindi for the purpose of this fellowship, given where we are going, that it is going to be a challenge to find accommodation every day. There is no hotels or guest houses where you can stay. It's always going to be talking to people, telling them what you're doing, asking them to help you find a place to stay and food to eat. And that's going to be a daily process for 2 weeks of the walk that you're going to be there. वर्षा, आपका सवाल आंसर हुआ इससे?
जी जी सिद्धार्थ, और मैं जरूर चाहूंगी कि चाहे या तो आप या जो दूसरे फेलो रहे हैं पहले के, वो अपना एक्सपीरियंस शेयर कर सकते हैं कि मतलब कोई दिक्कत नहीं हुई जब आप गए कम्युनिटी के बीच में रुकने को लेकर। बीइंग अ फीमेल जर्नलिस्ट भी ये जानना मतलब जरूरी
राइट,
है।
राइट वर्षा, जो हम ये नहीं कह रहे हैं कि कभी प्रॉब्लम नहीं हुई है, प्रॉब्लम्स होंगी एंड दैट इज पार्ट ऑफ द प्रोसेस। उसको हम कैसे ओवरकम करते हैं, वी विल वर्क टुगेदर उसको ओवरकम करने के लिए। एज फार एज एक्सपीरियंस जो की बात कर रहे हैं, बहुत राइटिंग अवेलेबल है, मेरा भी और हमारे फेलोज का भी। आपने जो लिंक से रजिस्टर किया है वहां पे लिंक है फेलोज का, आपको आज के क्या बोलते हैं सेशन के बाद एक ईमेल भी जाएगा जहाँ पे एक लिस्ट है स्टोरीज का, पुराने हमारे पहले से फेलोज जा चुके हैं, आप उसको रीड कर सकते हैं, उसमें वो एक्सपीरियंसेस डिटेल्ड है।
जी थैंक यू।
Okay. Thank you, Varsha. Satviki, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to know, how do you strike a balance between, scientific rigor and understanding the Luni from a scientific perspective, and then also getting people's perspectives and their stories and their attachment to the river? So, which do you give more weightage to, and when and how? Like, what is Veditam actually looking for from the journey across the river? Like, what are you seeking? Are you seeking science, or are you seeking people's science?
Right. Thanks, Satviki. I'll answer part of this question and then I'll also invite Pooja to talk about this little bit in terms of the answer for it. I'll speak from the past experience of what we have done. That it's not necessarily that both are mutually exclusive. Science and people's science need not be exclusive. Neither is science exclusive from people's stories. I think that's quite important, that
Yes.
there is a lot of
Yes.
observational power which can allow us to draw insights, which can allow us to understand. the changes, because science is things happening, right? It's what we are thinking about science principles, but science is essentially things happening which we are observing. And as
Yes.
observers, we then understand what do these signs mean, which is where we
Yes.
apply the science. The things happening are happening.
Yes.
We observe and we
Yes.
do with it
Yes.
is then the application of science. We have a strong
Yes.
interest in understanding how people relate themselves to the river and the landscape. It's a very strong interest area for Veditum. And in that building of a constitution of what is people's relationship to the river, when you start exploring that question more deep, you enter into questions around, okay, what is the river related to? What are people's practices related to? Which start giving you insights about what you would consider in a survey, a scientific survey. Because then we would look
Yes.
at the groundwater, we
Yes.
would look at what the agrarian systems are, we would look at what are the local practices for the area.
Yes.
So it's a
Yes.
it's mixed because we don't look at it purely from a numerical or data perspective, but we think that this is a living
Yes.
ecosystem where there are things to be learned. So the stories and
Yes.
the science happens together. What we do is we work with our fellows to say, see, these are the interests that we have at Veditam and along with our partners.
Right.
So we develop a method of
Yes.
asking those questions, and then we work with our fellows to see what are the interest areas
Yes.
of our fellows, and we develop a method with
Yes.
to understand those bits also. Then we combine the two,
Okay.
and then our fellows go onto the ground and collect the information. They observe, they build
Right.
relations, and then we sort of decompress all of that when people are back. And then we work on understanding what are the signs that we have observed. Pooja, would you want to add anything to
Right.
this?
So that I think you pretty much said it all. I completely agree. So the part, the scientific part, it's really about observations, right? And some of those observations could also mean measurements, but that's something that, as Siddharth said, those are some themes that we would develop together, and it's always with some sort of an idea of priority, right? Your safety, your figuring out daily logistics versus your interaction with people, getting people's stories, and then your own observation, your reflection. All of these are really very intimately related, and because we are not just interested in science as it stands alone, but the interrelationship between the people and how our actions have affected the hydrology of the river, and how that in turn has shaped or affected people.
Yes.
So it has to go hand in hand. And I think Siddharth's explained to you how we are thinking of doing it together.
Right.
I hope that
Thank you.
answered your question. Swati, if you want to ask your question.
I think Anchita's hand was raised earlier.
Hello.
No, Swati, and then Anchita next. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. Hi, Siddharth. I just wanted to ask, the group of fellows will be traveling together, or we are traveling solo? And what kind of documentation do you expect? Is there any fixed format is there, or means if we need in writing, so is there any word limit is set, or if video is there, so any length is fixed? Means what you expect from us, and is there any group of fellows will be traveling with us, and who is the, if anyone is coordinating, means if while traveling if we face anything, so हमारे साथ कोई रहेगा, or we have to call you people? Yeah.
Right. Swati, one question for you. आपने web page release किया था. Have you gone through it?
हाँ, देखा है.
आपने पढ़ा था पूरा?
याद नहीं इतना.
आपके सारे questions actually उस page पे answered हैं. And
Okay.
like to answer questions that are not on that page. I'll still brief you, but we expect you to have read the page properly before asking questions, right? That there will be 4 pairs which will be selected. हर pair में 2 लोग होंगे और वो 2 लोग साथ में walk करेंगे. And हम from the office will be in touch with you हम जो भी लोग होंगे ऑफिस में, मोहित और मैं, we'll be in touch with you regularly to help you navigate challenges that you face. So that is
Okay.
the what do you call it? A functional part of the question. In terms of documentation, I'll answer this because I think other people have also put the question in the chat. What kind of documentation that you expect? जैसे मैंने अभी पिछले में आंसर किया that वो documentation multiple formats में हो सकता है. डॉक्यूमेंटेशन वेदितम के इंटरेस्ट से, वेदितम के पार्टनर्स के इंटरेस्ट से और फेलोज के इंटरेस्ट से कंबाइन करके हम हर ग्रुप के लिए एक यूनिक फॉर्मेट क्रिएट करेंगे. हम डिसाइड नहीं करेंगे एज द ऑर्गेनाइजर्स, हम और फेलोज मिलके डिसाइड करेंगे कि वो फॉर्मेट क्या हो. इट्स नॉट समथिंग दैट वी विल एनफोर्स ऑन यू. We will together see what can work for you, your style, your ability, and then we'll put that together. So it's not something that we will enforce. But it can be multi-format. It can be written, it can be video recording, audio recording, it can be drawings.
Okay.
Yes, it's multiple things, but depends upon your skills also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And Anchita, you want to ask a question?
Yeah. Hi. So I wanted to just understand like from your experience and like what the logic for not logic, but why a 2 week period has been chosen. Because I just want to understand like when you're on field, it does take maybe a couple of days to first acclimatize and understand the place you're in and the field, right? So how has your journey in terms of timeline been and like your experience in terms of timeline? And secondly, would you be walking like every single day or just how your field experience in terms of, taking a day off to reflect on what happens on field and then you continue with your field work? So I just wanted to get some clarity, not clarity, but some understanding on that from your
Sure.
experience.
Fair question. First part on 2 weeks. The thing is that not everybody is able to take out longer periods of time for an exercise like this. So in order to make it accessible for more people, we've made it 2 weeks. So that's very functional in the approach perspective. In the bit about whether 2 weeks is enough, that's a forever question whether 2 weeks is enough. You will ask PhDs who spent 5 years doing their PhDs and they'll say 5 years is not enough. So we have to strike a balance somewhere to say that okay, we are taking up this time and we are dedicating ourselves very dedicatedly to doing this kind of work. And in our experience, with our fellows' experience, it has often been enough to get into that mental space, emotional space, comfort with communities, with ourselves, and with the landscape to be able to do the activities that we have decided that we have to do. And in terms of everyday walking, that's completely dependent. Some of our fellows, or me, myself, we've taken rest after 3 to 4 days of walking, rested a bit, and then restarted. I must emphasize, and I think thanks for bringing this up, we are not trying to create a record of how much you can walk. The method is important. The milestone is not important. The method, the application of the method is what is most important. You walk 110 kilometers instead of 130 kilometers that we thought you will walk. It's not a penalty. The idea is to apply yourself through that method, and that is most important. So I hope that answers the questions.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Mohit, who's next?
Subrata?
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I have just one question, like when the field work is going to be happening, because in the website I found that within 15 December the selection process will be completed. But, when the field work is going to be happening?
Sorry, I can't understand what you're saying, Subrata.
When the field work is going to be happening?
This is answered in the webpage. Please check it.
Okay.
This is between 15 January and 29th of February.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Tamam, do you want to ask your question?
Hello, sir. I would like to ask you about dependency on the river and the groundwater for irrigation, river bed farming, sand. What what is the planning? How to explore a plan in monitoring groundwater and irrigation on a careful scale?
Can you repeat the last part?
I would ask about how to link between careful groundwater and irrigation and Loni River.
Siddharth, shall I give it a go?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So, your name is Tamam, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, Tamam Yavi.
Okay. See,
Yes,
Tamam,
from
I think it's a
Syria.
very important question that you've asked about groundwater, because this particular landscape is actually saline. The subsoil in this whole area is saline. So, deep wells have a very short lifespan. And now what has happened is this whole landscape had a system of shallow wells. That is, wells that were recharged by the river, maybe 15 to 20 feet deep at the most. In the last 30 years, those have dried up. And now you have wells going down to 400, 500 feet. Gradually, this is leading to salinity of surface soil. So in case you are a part of the people who are involved in this work, and you feel this is an interesting question, we can develop methodologies which are not too technology intensive, but which are participatory. And then we can find information on this, which may be more directly answering and responding. It could be one area that we need to explore in the course of the exercise.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And for those who are struggling to raise hands, there's a reaction button. If you click on that, you get raise hands. Abhinav, do you want to ask a question?
Sure, Mohit. Thank you for all this information. मेरा सवाल थोड़ा पुनिंदु जी आप ही से था, and probably the entire group as well. So, मेरी मॉम राजस्थान से हैं. हमेशा मन किया राजस्थान पैदल घूमने का थोड़ा. पर जैसे पुनिंदु जी आपने कहा कि अगर if you can share लूनी नदी, so मैं उस एरिया से बिलोंग नहीं करता, मैं तो जयपुर अलवर साइड से बिलोंग करता हूँ. And I've never been in this topography. तो इस जो लूनी का स्ट्रेच जिस पे हम वॉक करने की बात कर रहे हैं, अगर उसकी टोपोग्राफी के बारे में, उसके ऑलरेडी जो आपने डॉक्यूमेंटेशन कर रखी है सर, एंड व्हाटएवर अंडरस्टैंडिंग इन्फ्रेंसेस, नॉट जस्ट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, अगर वो आप हमसे कुछ शेयर कर सकें व्हिच वी कैन रीड, बिकॉज दैट विल आल्सो हेल्प अस अंडरस्टैंड कि कहाँ जा रहे हैं, किन से मिल रहे हैं, क्या बात कर रहे हैं, और मेरा एरिया ऑफ इंटरेस्ट क्या हो सकता है. दैट विल बी वेरी हेल्पफुल इन for even for me to decide कि मेरे को apply करना है, नहीं करना है, whether this matches my interest or not. Or so, I mean, that was all. मेरे को बस यही बोलना था कि अगर वो share कर सकें, that will be very helpful.
I think we will be happy to share with you.
Thank you.
I will share with Siddharth and they will share it with you. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, Samarth?
Hi, Siddharth. I had just one question with regards to the method itself. So I think the main interest I think I have in the entire application is probably the method itself of just walking as a form of research. And of course, I don't think I have the expertise to deal with something socio-ecologically, socio-economically. But regarding the method, in the case that, say, a fellow says that I'm interested in doing the entire walk from mouth to source, does this come under does this fall under the gamut of the fellowship, or is this something that you take outside the fellowship itself?
Right. Yeah. No, that's a fair question. I will honestly answer that it falls outside the gamut of the fellowship.
Okay.
Because we are trying to be more inclusive by creating these blocks of time that people can access. I would say that if somebody is interested in doing the whole river, apply for the fellowship, get through with the fellowship, do the 2-week process, and then we can figure out together what we can do for the whole. So I think this is a good entry point also if you want to walk the whole river. because we will have information that others have collected from different parts. It'll open up the
Yeah.
brain.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Aparna?
Yeah, Aparna.
Yeah, hi Siddharth, hi everyone. So I'm actually a multimedia journalist and filmmaker based out of Chennai in Tamil Nadu. So my, I would say disadvantage here is probably the language Hindi. So far, I've been able to catch up with everything that you've all said and I've understood it. And I know that I've understood correctly because I understood that English translation is accurate as well. So since we'll all be traveling in pairs, the only other time that I've probably done something like this was when I had to go to Maharashtra and I didn't know Marathi or Hindi, but with the help of, fellow reporters, we were able to sort of exchange and understand multimedia versus, as in I'll take photos for you, can you be a translator for me, sort of a pairing. So, and also given that the Hindi that we're all speaking over here is far, I mean, I don't understand, I won't know the difference between ground level Hindi versus what we're speaking here. So how important is it right now for the fellowship application? Yeah.
Okay, I'll be honest, I think it's super important for you to be able to know the language. When in a time when we do this fellowship, say in South India, in one of the southern states, and say we're doing it in Kerala, we will need the applicants to know the language. We understand that, say, as a film crew, and I've made films, you can together work on being a translator for the other person, but I think it also takes away from the other person's experience. That's not what we want to happen here. And this is in no way saying that this is not a possibility. It's just that whoever we pair you with, it might be unfair for them. And that's not an experience that we want people to have. And yeah, I mean, that's the very honest answer of why we have the requirement of knowing Hindi. And whatever Hindi has been spoken here is very Bollywood Hindi. It's not the dialect, it's not the tone, it's not the pronunciations that we'll expect to hear in the landscape of the Luni. My ancestors are from Rajasthan. I've spent time in Rajasthan, and I know sometimes I fail to understand the Hindi spoken in my village. So I can expect significant challenges of understanding the dialect in these locations.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Aparna. I think Satish has raised his hand in the chat. If he wants, he can ask a question. But until then, Maroof has sent me a question saying, I'm from the law background. Am I able to join this walk, or is this only for people who belong to journalism? So, I mean, just briefly, there is no cap on background. In fact, I think previous walks, and Siddharth can tell you more, there have been illustrators, there have been sound engineers. I think because basically getting people from diverse perspectives and backgrounds really help in understanding a river. I think journalists are actually very few, no? Must be about 5, 6 probably throughout.
Yeah, I mean, I think journalists do have an edge with their ability to write and express and offer possibilities. We're also trying to reduce our bias. So, which is why we offered that you send your applications as a video, as an audio, so you don't have to rely on writing skill alone to send your application. But please apply. If you're a lawyer, please apply. The law is a tool to understand so many things. So we'd be happy to have you as an applicant. Pooja, you had something to add?
Just jump in for a moment here. I just wanted to add that absolutely, I think as a lawyer, we would, if you get selected, that's a lens we would absolutely love to see the river from, because once you start to study a little bit about the river, you will see how it is very applicable in the kind of challenges that are being faced in the region. So there are lots of sort of public interest litigations, a lot of other things that are happening around the Luni. And I think you would find it fascinating to, from your perspective, to also understand these challenges.
Just following up on this question, that we are not looking only for journalists to apply. You can be from any background and apply. You may not have had anything to do with the sciences, with the art. I mean, literally any background. If you can make a good enough pitch for why you should be doing this walk, that's good enough for us. Your background is just a helpful context for us. That's all. It's not defining your application.
Yeah, I mean, and just to add, I think we're not looking for, say, water researchers or people with field experience. It's just if you can talk to people, if you can get their stories, and say at the end of it, you're doing a song or an interpretive dance or like, anything. You don't need to write 3,000 words. You don't need to do beautifully shot documentaries only. Like any way to be creative, any way to be like, bring in perspectives. Yeah, Siddharth.
Yeah, there was a question earlier in the chat. I'm just going to refer to it from Madhuri. So I think part of it has already been answered. Part of it is an answer in the webpage that we have. The post-work will happen digitally. We'll be in conversation and we'll decompress and talk to you and get those stories going after the walk. Your part of the question regarding are there any local community members already involved? So this is a work in progress, and I'll invite Pooja to say a little bit more regarding our local community members already involved. In our past walks, we've been able to establish some community contacts who we've spoken to. We've built new community contacts, and that's been a work in progress always. But there are connections already. Purnendu has mentioned, Pooja will also probably add on that there is already a connection with the landscape. Directly as well as through our partners. Veditum also has other partners through which we know folks on the ground around the Luni. So there is involvement, and we'll build on it as we grow further into this fellowship. Pooja, would you want to add anything on that?
No, just I think as you said, we do have some partners. I think Purnendu has the most experience amongst us and would know of far many more contacts, and would and we would work together on that. But really, we are also relying on you to expand that network of contacts. So.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, Lakshman Singh.
यस सर।
हाँ जी, आपका कुछ सवाल?
सवाल तो क्या है, जवाब बहुत सारे हैं। आई होप सबको हिंदी आती होगी अच्छी तरीके से।
जी, कंटिन्यू।
बिल्कुल, मैं बेसिकली राजस्थान में पाली जिले से बिलोंग करता हूँ, और इस वॉक मूवमेंट में इसीलिए जुड़ा हूँ कि जो लूनी है उसको काफी नजदीक से जानते हैं हम। जो बैकग्राउंड का जो आपने पिक्चर लगा रखा है, एक रिवर जो है सड़क को पार कर रही है, आप बताना चाहेंगे कि इसके पीछे ये कहाँ से लिया आपने?
तो मैं जवाब देती हूँ, क्योंकि फोटोग्राफ मैंने ली है और ये अल्निवास में इस जुलाई महीने में ली गई थी, जबकि पानी बह रहा था नदी में, तब ये फोटोग्राफ मैंने लिया।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, अल्निवास की ये जो नदी है, शायद मैम को पता होगा, लगभग आफ्टर 31 ईयर्स, लगभग 31 साल के बाद ये रिवर जो है, यहाँ पर बड़ा विवाद चला था कि ये जो नदी है इस सड़क को पार करके आगे वाले गांवों में जाएगी या नहीं। मतलब वाटर की इंपॉर्टेंस उनके लिए कितनी ज्यादा थी कि आगे जो गांव पड़ रहा था वो था रिया गांव करके था। तो अल्निवास वाले लोग कह रहे थे इस पानी का जो है मैक्सिमम यूज हम करेंगे, रिया वाले कह रहे थे कि नहीं, इस पानी को जो है हमारे तक भी पहुंचने दिया जाए, आप उसको रोको मत। तो ये 31 साल बाद जो है इस प्रकार से जो रिवर के अंदर पानी आना उनके लिए बहुत मतलब एक आश्चर्य था कि किस प्रकार से जो है लूनी जो है पहले मतलब थ्रू आउट ए ईयर जो बहती थी, आज उसकी ये स्थिति है कि मतलब आप कल्पना नहीं कर सकते, जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ बिपरजॉय। तो बिपरजॉय के कारण जो है यहाँ पर इतनी सारी बारिश हुई कि इस प्रकार की ये नदी जो है ये बहने लगी। बाकी ये सीजनल नदी है, मेरे हिसाब से पूजा मैम बेहतर तरीके से जानते होंगे। तो ये काफी मतलब इसमें मैं हेल्प कर सकता हूँ जो भी इंटरेस्टेड है। तो लोकली जो है मैं इस एरिया को भी जो है अच्छी तरीके से जानता हूँ, तो जो भी इंटरेस्टेड है तो मेरे से जो है संपर्क कर सकते हैं।
थैंक यू लक्ष्मण जी, हम आपसे कांटेक्ट में रहेंगे। आपका ईमेल आईडी तो मिल ही गया हमें अब, और
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल
डेफिनेटली चर्चा करेंगे। हम ही आपकी हेल्प चाहेंगे फेलोज के पहले।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, मैं तैयार हूँ सर।
थैंक यू।
थैंक यू।
एक मिनट सिद्धार्थ, लक्ष्मण जी, मेरा नाम पूर्णेंदु है, मैं अल्नेवास में बेस्ड हूँ। अगर आप उधर आते हैं कभी तो मिलिएगा।
अल्नेवास में हैं आप?
हाँ, मैं अल्नेवास में हूँ, आधे टाइम अल्नेवास में रहता हूँ, और आप आ जाइए। हमारा छोटा ऑफिस है वहाँ पे,
मैं एक्चुअली मैं यहाँ पर पाली में रानी है, रानी के पास एक गर्ल्स इंस्टीट्यूट है विद्यावाड़ी करके,
हाँ
वहां पर पोस्टेड हूँ। हालांकि डिस्टेंस ज्यादा है, मैक्सिमम मेरे आई थिंक 100 किलोमीटर्स के अकॉर्डिंग डिस्टेंस है,
हाँ
लेकिन एरिया काफी नोन है। तो
अच्छा,
अगर
नहीं
मैं
अच्छा
वहां
लगा।
सूरत जेतारन आता हूँ तो जरूर आपसे
आप आए, मेरा ईमेल ले लीजिए, अपन अलग से बात भी करेंगे। और
श्योर,
हाँ, अपन अच्छा लगा कि आप ज्वाइन करें आज। थैंक यू।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, थैंक यू।
Thank you so much. Shri, please ask your question. We have 5 more minutes, so if anyone has, just put it in the
Yeah.
chat.
Hi, so these are just questions from my past experience. Like when I was part of this project in Basav Kalyan in North Karnataka, it was a living archival project. So like few problems that I faced back then, like one was related to consent. Like we're meeting people, collecting their stories, and so like, do we have like a process or like a procedure that Veditum has for itself that we can pick up, or like a form, signature? I don't know. So that's one. And second thing that I came across is people see us traveling. We do look like outsiders because we are not merging with them. So we were asked who sent us and if we have an ID card or who we are representing. And it came up a couple of times. Yeah.
No, good questions. I think these are good questions. Right. So first question that you have regarding consent. So once we select the fellows, we have a training program for everybody where we discuss all of these aspects in details. But to be very clear that there is explicit consent required whenever you are documenting somebody, not for stories necessarily when you are recording, but if you're taking photographs or videos, you definitely need to take consent. And there are different ways of working with consent. So it's not always a form through which you can work on consent. So we'll be working with our fellows to develop, especially for those who've not had experience around consent when documenting. Most people in cities do not have a context of consent. So we will build that context of consent with our fellows. So it's part of our process. So that's the first part. The second part, yes, you will get an identity card saying that you're on this fellowship, you're being sent by this organization. So you can always share that ID card. I will warn you though that sometimes even that is not accurate. There's a lot of discussions that have to be protracted, long discussions that follow. Like I've been stopped at a place where I've been made to sit for 4 hours answering questions, trying to convince that I'm just a regular person doing this research work. So that's something we can't predict. There are people who've not had any of that challenge, but you will get an identity card that you're there and working on this project, etc. Yeah.
Just to repeat again that if you're selected, there is a bunch of like orientation and workshops. So you'll be talking to other fellows. We're talking to Dr. Purnendu and Dr. Puja Prasad, what to expect. We'll just have a series of orientation. Siddharth, I think Nayantara's asked, do the communities get to see the outputs? If yes, how?
Right. No, that's a great question. I think this has always been a challenge in terms of how much we've been able to take back to the community. We're working on this, I think, especially with the Luni, given that there's a long-term interest that Pooja has, Punendu has, and the project has at School of Public Policy. I think now we are even more confident that we'll be able to take the work back from where it has come. So very important question, and this is something that we really want to work on. We have like our subjects, if I say that in the documentary that we've made from the Ganga, have watched the documentary. So that's something that we've been doing, being in touch with them, whatever output has been created, if it's possible, we've shared with them. But we're not perfect in any way. There's a lot for us to do better, and we're working on making that better. And I'm really hopeful with the Luni, we can do a very good job of taking the material back to where it's come from. Right. Okay. I think there was one question that, yeah, I think, I don't know who this person is. Your name is marked as iPhone. You're from Haryana and you've talked about parents not allowing you. So I think that's the base rule that we have. We cannot talk to your parents. You have to convince your parents. That's part of the eligibility requirements. And I'm sorry that it's a challenge where you want to do this, but you have parental restrictions. But that's something that we need you to be able to do. If you're able to do it, please apply. We'd be really happy to have you.
But that, I mean, we're running out of time. But lastly, I mean, and it's probably a question that's on a lot of people's minds, just on safety, like, in terms of safety of the fellows and safety of women. So if Siddharth, Pooja, and Purnendu want to get in, just a couple of lines, just from your experience and this, like, yeah, just a
Right.
film.
Cool. So one, I think everybody's concerned whether the resources will be shared with them or not. Rest assured, the resources we share with one person will be shared with everybody. So there's no preferential treatment for anybody. Any resource we share will go out to everybody. That's one. Second, in terms of what Mohit raised, I think it's an important question. One is that we've tried to have gender diversity throughout the fellowship. So every group that has gone out has been balanced that way. We're still working on even more diversity across different intersections in the social spectrum. So we are working towards that. Having said that, there are always challenges that are thrown up. And given the kind of patriarchal society that we live in, the challenges are very varied. At the same time, where the patriarchal system can become a challenge for women who are traveling, sometimes it also becomes the shield because people are wanting to protect you. It comes from the same source, manifestations are different. So there are both edges of that sword. Most of our fellows have not had an experience of being targeted because of their gender. Some unfortunate situations do arise, which we have dealt with, and people are safe. All our fellows are safe. They've been able to continue doing their work. And this is something that, is unpredictable, but we work with you to prepare you how to deal with it. We cannot 100% ensure that there will be no incident which will make you uncomfortable. And I want to be as clear about this as I can, that we expect adults to be going out there who can take care of themselves. We'll work with you to prepare you to face challenges that emerge. But I don't want to give you any illusions that this is a controlled system. This is an open system. This is the society that we live in. This is the state of the social system. Whatever happens is an outcome of the society that we live in. So it's not a controlled system where we can assure what is going to happen, but we work best with you to ensure that we can deal with challenges as they emerge. So that's what I would say. And what is a testimony to how we've been able to manage is that we've had varied groups of people who've undertaken this work through some extremely difficult physical and social landscapes. And we've managed the challenges as we've come across them. So I'll urge you to actually go to Veditum's website, read through the stories that the fellows have written. They have detailed these experiences. They've outlined what are the challenges that they face. They've outlined how they were able to manage it, how we were able to support them in managing those challenges. So I think we have those testimonies from our fellows towards the safety bit. So we'll just take one last question and then any comments that Pooja or Punendu want to add. Aishwarya, go for it.
Yeah, sorry for giving this last minute. I just wanted to be clear, the 1,000 word, the note we are supposed to submit all.
Sorry, your voice suddenly dropped.
Can you hear me?
Your voice is quite low.
Am I audible to you?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So the 1,000 word article, the note which we are supposed to submit about Luni while applying, I just wanted to understand what is the expectation out of it. Is it supposed to be an information document where we write, where we do this research and read about it and put the information about Luni together? Or are we expected to speak to experts and quote them in that? Are we trying to are we expected to reference articles, like reference the links to the information we are getting? Like, what is the expectation out of the 1,000 word article?
Okay, so first, you don't need to necessarily write this. You can record this as a video, as an audio also. So that option is also open. Second, it's not just about your research on the Luni. If you read the application process, and again, please go back and read the page. I think it details out what we are expecting from that 1,000 words. In those 1,000 words, we want to understand how you look at a landscape. We want to understand how you think about people, how you think about information that you're coming across. How do you want to convey that message at a later stage? That's what we want to understand. Wherever you can reference, please reference. It's always very helpful. Or where you are sourcing your information from.
Okay.
There is value in referencing where you're getting your information from. So that's quite important. You can send your note as a PowerPoint presentation. We don't mind it at all. So feel free to do that also.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Pooja, Punendu, do you want to add any closing comments before we pause for today?
Punendu, you're on mute.
Just a word or two on this safety and security. I think this whole point about, patriarchy being a double-edged sword, it's protective and it is also creates conditions. Rajasthan is extraordinary in the sense that it's a deeply patriarchal society. And if I will be surprised if women from other parts of India do not experience a sense of gender shock when they go and work in the field here. It is something to be expected. That is the way the society is. So I would definitely anticipate a certain amount of discomfort. However, some of the conditions about Western Rajasthan, these parts, is that there is a fairly persistent culture of reciprocity and a degree of accommodation of people who are coming and going and so on and so forth. So I don't think it will be that difficult to find places to stay and negotiate your way across the landscape. The other thing to notice and emphasize is caste. This is a landscape where caste is deeply important. The first question you will be asked is, what is your Kai Jat? That's the first question you will be asked. And all the relationship that follows will be structured by that. You need to, again, start thinking about how you're going to work in a landscape like that. So I just mentioned these two cautionary observations, which when you write and you think about your proposal, you might want to keep in mind.
Thank you, Punendu. I think that's quite useful and quite important to note that caste will play an important role. How we navigate is both unpredictable, though we will work on resolving that, right? But I think we'll have to close the discussion for today. Otherwise, this can go on for quite long. Everyone, I hope your questions have been answered. If it's not been answered, please send us an email. You have our email address. And we'll answer your questions on email as best as we can. There's a question in the chat. We'll answer it while we are closing down. But thank you for joining today. We're really looking forward to your applications. आपके जो जैसे applications हैं, जो interests हैं, हम उत्सुक हैं देखने के लिए कि आप किस तरीके से इसको imagine कर रहे हैं, आप किस तरीके से एक नदी के बारे में, लोगों के बारे में सोच रहे हैं, किस तरीके से आप कहानियों के बारे में सोच रहे हैं जिनको आप एक्सप्रेस करना चाहते हैं अपने तरीके से। आप देखें हमारे फेलोज ने आज तक किस तरीके का काम किया है। हमने कभी भी लिमिटेशंस इंट्रोड्यूस नहीं किए हैं कि आप किस तरीके का काम कर सकते हैं या नहीं कर सकते। तो हम चाहते हैं कि आप उस इमेजिनेशन को खोलें, अपने इमेजिनेशन से हमें दिखाएं कि हम इसको कैसे डिफरेंटली कर सकते हैं। सो डोंट फील लिमिटेड बाय wherever else you might have applied in the past. Feel free to express in your application. We really appreciate your interest in the fellowship, and thanks for joining. I'll stop the recording now. We'll upload this later for everybody else to also access.
Okay, with that, I think we wrap